Education Leadership League. It's a nonprofit that a group of women in Modesto co-founded. And what we do is we provide emotional, financial, and physical wellness seminars, mentorship, and education for women. And one of the main areas that we've received the most traction from women that needed our help was in the divorce space. And so one of our divorce mentors, Stacy Speiller, is here. So Stacy, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. So I am Stacy Speiller. I am a certified family law specialist. I practice in Stanislaus County. Currently, I serve as the president of the family law section of the Stanislaus County Bar Association. I'm also on the board of directors for the Stanislaus County Bar Association.
And Stacy has helped many of the women in our nonprofit.
I try. I hope I'm helping. Yeah,
you are.
Thank you.
We've only received positive feedback, and really
great. It's good to hear.
So one of, divorce can be incredibly stressful, and especially when it comes to finance. There's many people make rash decisions and don't know where to start, specifically the non-financial oriented spouse. And so it's really important to get your divorce team together, a great attorney, CPA, and financial professional to help you through the process. So
yeah, I would agree with that. It's really important, and it's difficult sometimes because we always know that divorce is so, it's emotional. So not only are you going through a very emotional and oftentimes traumatic experience, but at the same time, you're now required to really hunker down and get all of your information together. And that's very difficult for a lot of people. So we give our clients a checklist of documents that we think that they'll need at the outset of the divorce. And oftentimes it takes some time to gather that information, but it is really good at the outset to keep some good records.
Great. And do you want to share a few of the key checklist documents that you think?
Sure. So if there's been a will or a trust, that would be really important at the outset to have, because that will oftentimes we'll need to go ahead and perhaps revoke the trust. We need to read it, see if it's secured by anything, or if anything's secured by it, and also to see if there's a will. And oftentimes parties going through the process might need a new will in place. Also really important to gather information pertaining to any real property, copies of deeds, copies of mortgage statements, bank account information, copies of statements. Those kinds of documents are really important at the outset.
That's good. And also some of the things that we've noticed too that Stacy has helped with, I remember we had a situation where there was possibly a medical issue. So it was like, get a physical, make sure you kind of tie up all those loose ends prior to going forward. So oftentimes I can tell you from an attorney's perspective, we work with clients who are, that we say that there really is a cycle to divorce, very similar and akin to a death. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So oftentimes we have clients in various stages of that cycle, and so it's different for everybody who's going through the process, kind of what they need to know and gather that information. Should we open it for questions?
Yeah, the Q&A is open, but we also have a question for you guys. What is the greatest mistake someone can make when they're going through a divorce?
The greatest mistake is probably putting the emotion over everything else. And that's why it's really important at the outset, even if you're not going to retain counsel. And in fact, a lot of people who go through that process are not represented. I don't know the statistic offhand, so I don't want to misquote it. But it would be smart to at least have a consultation with an attorney because they can give you an objective perspective. A lot of the times people want to lead with their emotions. Another, I think, mistake that a lot of people make is not fully investigating the facts. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people will rely on, they'll Google, or they'll talk to their friend who says, well, I got this, or I got that, or my, the other day, my family member in Rhode Island said X, Y, and Z. Well, everybody's every state is different. California is a community property state as opposed to a lot of other states. And also everybody's situation is different. So it's really important at the outset to try to get some objective perspective on it, and to consult with an attorney if at all possible.
Actually, we've seen that where women just feel so desperate to get out, afraid, and they literally walk away from everything, and they have many rights to receive quite a bit of help. So
and then there's always the concern, you know, we have financial aspects, and then when they interlink that with issues with custody and visitation, those are two separate, distinct things. But for a lot of people, there's the dependency on support, there's the issue of who's going to live in the home, and then the custody and visitation that are all, I think, inextricably linked for a lot of people, and so they need to really be talking with an attorney and trying to parcel that out. And if they can get other perspective, a lot of the times people will bring someone to meet with the attorney who can act as maybe a scribe or as a second set of ears and eyes, and as long as it's okay with the consulting party, you know, I don't have a problem with that either.
And that's a really good point, because a lot what you mentioned about the home, because a lot of times we have seen where, you know, one spouse says, oh, you keep the home, I'll take the retirement account, and then we run the long-term numbers, like one's bankrupt and one's a multimillionaire.
Yes, that's a really good point, that a lot of people say, well, you just keep the retirement, without knowing what it's worth. And you know, for a lot of our clients, will say, you know, as long as you are comfortable with the settlement, you believe it's a fair settlement, you know, oftentimes we will back that. However, I think it's really smart for women in particular to know what they have before they decide to negotiate with it or give it away. And that's part of disclosure. You know, in California, we are parties have a fiduciary duty to disclose to one another what they, all the assets and debts that they have. So a lot of the time we'll get a spouse who says, well, I don't know what my husband has. I don't know. Well, in fact, or, you know, or I'll get the flip side. I'll have a husband who says, I don't know what my wife has a bank account, I'm not sure where it is, I'm not sure how much is in it. And in fact, part of the process is that the parties are to disclose that to one another and to give you documentation actually without even requesting it. But there's all kinds of discovery devices. That's another reason why someone might want to consult with an attorney, is that there really are a lot of discovery devices that are available to people to determine and get that information that they might not have so readily accessible to them.
Another question from a Twitter user. I'm not sure I will have enough to live on once my divorce is final. How do I know how much alimony to go after?
Okay. So we tell people it's really important at the outset when you are thinking that you're going to need support that you apply. And that is because there are a lot of issues with timing. So if you've been living on your own for a while and trying to make ends meet, but you haven't applied for support, you're not going to get support retroactive to that time period. I tell people you can't sit on your rights and you need to apply for support when you know you need it. So in terms of looking at what I'm going to be getting for support, child support and temporary spousal support in California, well, we call child support, it's guideline child support. And it's a formula that we use, and commonly in our courts we use a program called DissoMaster, which will go ahead and calculate. And if anybody looks online, their Department of Child Support Services actually has a free calculator online. It facially looks different than the one that we use and that oftentimes that the court uses, but it calculates the same way. And basically takes into consideration the income of the parties and the percentage of time that they spend with the minor child or children. There are some other things that it takes into consideration as well, mandatory retirement, union dues, and the like, and that will usually provide a number for guideline child support. Spousal support on a temporary basis, courts generally will use that same calculator for support. So oftentimes, again, going back to being able to consult with an attorney who might be able to prepare that information. If that's something that you're considering, you may want to bring in a copy of the latest pay stubs for the parties, and so that attorney, he or she, might be able to run some numbers and give you an idea on what you can expect.
And that's actually a really great point, because we had a woman that we had worked with who thought, you know, her husband had presented a number that was a fourth of what the temporary order that
Right.
she ended up with. So it's really good to consult your attorney. And
people can negotiate. You know, the great thing too is people can talk about, they don't always have to go to court. There's this misconception that everybody needs to run out to court, and they don't need to do that. But it's important that if parties are going to be working out these kinds of issues, that there be a basis at least communicated as to how that number was reached. Yeah. So oftentimes people will come into me and they'll say, my husband or my wife offered me the sum of X, and my next question is, and how is that calculated? And if you don't know how that's calculated, that's probably not a good situation.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have another question from the chat.
Sure.
What's the best advice you could give someone who's thinking about getting a divorce?
To make sure that they're really prepared, that it's not again, a lot of divorce is based on emotion, and that you be in a position at that point to make that decision. You have to make sure that you're comfortable with that decision, that you have everything lined up. We haven't talked extensively today. I do a lot with domestic violence, and I'm the vice chair of the Coordinating Council for Stanislaus County, and part of that, I do a lot of speaking, public speaking on domestic violence issues. But for a lot of, when I say survivors of domestic violence, it's really important to have a safety plan in place, that they've consulted with the right people, not only an attorney, but also perhaps the Haven is a really wonderful resource for people who are thinking they're going to go through this process and leave their spouse who is violent. Making sure that they have all the documents ready to go, making sure that everything is in a safe and secure place. I think it's really important for people to recognize that if they're going, so for example, that they not only have documents, but anything that means anything. I tell a lot of clients, if there's anything in that home that means anything, that has significant value, not necessarily a monetary value, but a photo or an emotional connection. Perhaps your grandfather gave something to you, or important jewelry, that you get it out of the home, or that you keep it for safekeeping. You can't dispose of it by California law. You can't throw it away. You can't sell it on the street for $1. But you can keep it safe. And the difficulty comes when someone says, oh, this was in the home and now it's gone, and that's where a lot of difficulty can come from. So making sure people have everything that they need ready to go. Also making sure, another thing that I think is important for people is to reach out to other people. And that's why I think WELL is so wonderful, is that you provide resources for women in different facets of their lives. Support, in order for women in particular to be successful through this divorce process, which I tell people has a lot of highs but a lot of lows, that there is nothing more important than having a support system in place, be it family members, be it friends, be it other women who have gone through this process. It's really important to have that support structure in place.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point, but 2 points that Stacy made. One, I had the privilege of going to one of your seminars at Haven and learned so many valuable things about domestic violence and how to be a support system. So it really kind of transformed on our wellness in WELL, because we provide the financial, emotional, and physical wellness for women. So it transforms how we were able to help them feel even more safe. And we've had women finally feel comfortable and safe enough to leave a situation like that because of Stacy and because of WELL and having that support system.
And I think what you offer also through WELL is, I so have often over the years have referred a lot of my clients to financial advisors to say, if this is going to be the amount of money that you're going to be able to live on, or when we're talking about settlement negotiation and saying, if you would keep the home and the monthly payment's going to be this, and your gas and your insurance is all going to be Y amount, are you going to be able to make it on this? Is this going to be a good settlement for you? And so I've been so fortunate to be able to refer people through the WELL process also to say, we're looking at long term. I come in and my job is to, under California law, to divide everything equally, the assets and debts, to get a custody visitation order in the best interest of the children, to get child support and spousal support established. But it's really important that women especially have a long-term goal on where they want to be in 5 years. Where do you want to be in 10 years? And is what you're going to get in the settlement going to be conducive to that goal?
Well, thank you for allowing us to have that opportunity to help them.
Absolutely.
It does feel really good after we run the numbers and they see the long-term effects that they will be okay. They're not going to be a bad lady.
I tell people there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
It's coming, but you know, it takes time. And you know, the divorce process itself, even I always tell people, even when people are completely amicable with one another, it's a tedious process. There's a lot of paperwork involved. Oftentimes in our county, we have case management on Fridays, and there are people who will appear and they say, we don't have anything to fight over. We're not fighting over anything. We just want to get through this process. The paperwork can be a real bear. It's tedious. It's time consuming, and it is emotionally taxing for people. And so it is good sometimes to sit down with people and say, well, where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years? And how can we really accomplish this goal? Because we say we see good people at their worst.
Yeah.
It's a tough time for people going through this process. And so if we can give people the hope, and I have had, you know, I've had clients come back to me years later and say, you know, I'm doing really well, and this is what my children are doing well.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're going to college and this, and they show me pictures, and I've been able to move on, and I met somebody new, and it's great to see that there is life beyond divorce.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that life ends. It's not the end of the world. It's unfortunately a process that a lot of people will go through, but there is, it's an unfortunate process that a lot of people go through, but it is not the end all. There is life, and it's a good thing afterwards.
And we are in a fortunate time where divorce, you know, there are so many more opportunities and resources for people going through
Absolutely.
divorce.
For women especially, there are
Yeah.
many more resources, including wealth, that offers this women this amazing opportunity to help in different facets. For example, a lot of women who go through this process have had to shift their employment. A lot of times they've taken off to raise the children, or they've been reliant upon their husband to be the breadwinner in the family. And things change with a divorce. It's, you know, you're taking a home and you're separating it into two, and all of a sudden there's not enough to meet the needs of everybody involved. So a lot of women need to go through, looking for employment. The first time that they may need help with their resume, or with interview skills, or just making connections. And I think that's a great thing that WELL provides, is opportunities to network and to look into possible job opportunities.
Well, thank you.
We have another question from the Q&A. How long can I collect alimony after the divorce is final?
So that really depends. It depends on a number of factors. And when we talk about long-term support, it's different than temporary support. So temporary support is really meant to maintain the status quo. Long-term support is meant to maintain, it's really meant for the marital standard of living. And so if parties don't agree on what that amount's going to be, or the duration, then the court looks at what are Family Code 4320, which spells out a lot of different factors. But the short, kind of sweet answer to that is it really is going to depend on many of those factors, as well as the length of the marriage. It's presumed that a marriage over 10 years or 10 years and over in California is a long-term marriage, and therefore there's not necessarily a termination date on support. In fact, there's not a termination date on support unless the parties agree to it. Anything less than 10 years is oftentimes 1/2 the length of the marriage. So,
Great answer.
child support's a little bit different. Okay, so child support, it depends. If we're talking about, we're often talking about 18 and a graduate from high school, or 19, whichever occurs soonest. There's a myth that a lot of people come to me and they say, well, what about, I heard that my spouse is also going to be required to pay for college. That is not the case in California, unless parties agree to it and they put it in writing, and then it becomes a contract. Child support, though, there's 3 components of child support. When we often talk about child support, it's the cash number that's based on that program, that online program or computer program that we talked about. It is also 1/2 of uncovered medical, dental, prescription, vision, orthodontia expenses for the minor children, and also, if necessary, 1/2 of employment-related child care costs is paid by each party.
Okay, I think we have time for one more.
Okay.
Okay.
I inherited my mom's house and retirement account. Do I need to split this with my spouse?
Okay.
So the property question.
Without going into a lot of detail about asking all kinds of specific questions, in a nutshell, monies that are an inheritance, a gift, a devise, are treated differently than community property. In California, community property means everything that you and your spouse have acquired during the life of the marriage. but there's an exception, and that's separate property, as you were just indicating, for an inheritance. So it's really important, though, not just that. If a client comes to me and says, I'm about to inherit, or I have inherited, really important too that they keep that money separate and apart from all other funds, that they don't do what we call commingle the money, where the money now goes into a community account and the parties are spending it, or they're also putting in their paycheck with it, and all of a sudden they're diluting that separate property trace that might be necessary, or that source. So
and that can be very confusing to separate and very expensive. So two things. Very important to keep it separate, and very important to get an attorney if you have an inheritance.
At the outset, I have the conversation with the client when somebody says, well, I've got this money, and then, what did you do with the money? When did you get the money? What did you do with the money? What account did it go into? Did you deposit anything else? So there's a litany of questions, and oftentimes if it is convoluted, it's not impossible to trace. Right. But as you've indicated, it can be expensive. It involves a lot of other financial experts involved. It requires testimony. So it can be, again, a very difficult and laborious process to go through. So good for people to, again, if they're contemplating divorce, to be talking with specialists, not only attorneys, but also financial advisors, to be talking early on about what do I need to have in place? How can I feasibly invest my money so that it goes further than I think? What can I do about the home? Can I afford the home? That's another question that often comes up. We know that a lot of people are attached to a home, or that they want to raise their children in the home, and the question is, can they feasibly do that long term? Financial advisors, accountants, all of those really, those advisors are really important to get involved, oftentimes early in the process.
Yeah, it eases a lot of stress, I think, too, by having your financial, legal, and tax team, your sort of divorce team together, because then you can look at the numbers and realize that it's doable.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. At this time, we have no more questions. Alana, do you want to let the audience know how to follow us on our various social media platforms?
Yeah, so our website is www.well, W-E-L-L, the number 4, women, is plural with an E, .org, so well4women.org. And our social media is the same. So it's well, the number 4, women, and it's the @ sign for those of us that are tech challenged. So on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and we're also on Snapchat, which I'm still, to confess, I'm not on yet myself, but I will be.
And you have wonderful events coming up as well.
Yeah, we have, oh, thank you. We have our Living Well event on May 21st at the Modesto Center Plaza, and it's from 9 to 1. And we have a Eventbrite link on our social media and also on our website that you can register. The event is free because we have incredible sponsors such as Stacy.
I'm excited to just go to the event. I read about it. I thought, this is wonderful that you're doing this for the community. It's great.
Thank you. And there will be also food, some snacks provided. So that's part of why I'm motivated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll be at Modesto Center Plaza from 9 to 1 on May 21st. But please get your ticket because we do have to. It's getting filled pretty quickly. So and you can get that either on social media or on our website.
And thank you so much for having me.
This was a joy. I wouldn't have anyone else. Our original date that we had planned was during her mother daughter tea, and I said, well, we help women. How can we?
In true spirit, she accommodated me, and I truly appreciate that. And I hope that this was helpful for a lot of women who might be viewing this. So.
Yeah, me too. Well, thank you so much, and thank you so much, Stacy.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we hope that you will join us again when we do this next time. And we also hope that you will come to Living Well and follow us on our website to learn more about how you can get involved and attend our courses and our classes and our seminars. So thank you.
Thank you.